That I'm moving to T for torso. T for torso. Nothing reduces us to the status of slaves quicker than sex, which is, of course, part of the fun. Men do what they do and women do what they do, but women know their bodies are battlegrounds and men know that they do very ugly things in the name of control. The torso can be both a work of art and of horror. It denies personality and without qualms focuses our thoughts on a limbless, vulnerable sexuality. The torso in the picture frame or on the pedestal is a captive figure made subject to our will, to our fantasies. Jennifer Chambers Lynch, the daughter of maverick filmmaker David Lynch and the writer-director of the controversial Boxing Helena, 1993, admits, "I myself am obsessed with the torso, male and female, so I think that it is a phenomenal shape. It does so many things, it holds so many things, and it holds, interestingly enough, the parts of us that are most instinctual. The brain is excluded, the legs don't matter, the arms don't matter, but the genitals and heart are as vague as we are at times, but have their purpose." I started this obsession with the Venus de Milo because my grandmother had a small statuette of it in her home, and I thought, well, what if this man in this story was obsessed with this statue, and what if it was primarily due to the fact that it never hit him, it never struck out at him, or moved away from him. It simply looked down on him lovingly and was easily embraced. So the Venus de Milo came into it, and I thought, rather than tearing her apart, what if you simply molded her into something that didn't make him afraid and didn't go away, so maybe his family had done. So that was born Boxing Helena. I felt it had to be a love story, continues Chambers Lynch. It can't be a horror film, and it can't be about condoning the act that takes place. It's more of an invitation to try something magical and different, rather than what it could have been, a very horrifying, degrading picture to women. I do think that when men are trying to dissect out or figure out women, she says, it is ultimately impossible for them to exclude the physicalities of what the women are and their initial drive to be inside them, to fill them up, to encircle them, and keep them. 19th century medical paintings reveal a repressed eroticism in the scalpel-wielding surgeon peers into the bodily recesses of passive nude females. The all-powerful male voyaged into the hetero unknown female interior. The new disciplines of dissection and gynecology cast surgeons as colonizing and conquering heroes. Within contemporary horror, nobody explores the theme of bodily violation more incisively than the Canadian director, David Cronenberg. And we got some asides. So often, sex is about obsession. Often, horror fiction is about obsession. Sex is about coming to terms with feelings that you're most out of control of. Horror fiction is over and over again about the body. Clive Barker. Boxing Helena, USA 1993, director Jennifer Chambers Lynch, with Julian Sands, Sherilyn Fenn, Bill Paxton, Kurtwood Smith, Art Garfunkel, Betsy Clark, Mainline Pictures, color. Humiliated by his mother as a child, voyeuristic surgeon Dr. Nick Kavanagh, Sands, is obsessed with the beautiful Helena Fenn, whom he worships. When she rejects his advances, he imprisons her and amputates her limbs, turning her into a living torso subject to his power and fantasies. In astute career moves, Madonna and Kim Basinger both turned down the titular role, and despite Sands' compulsively neurotic mad doctor, the film doesn't have the courage of its convictions and cops out with an "it was all a dream" ending. We're all peeping Toms at heart. Some people, regardless of my attempts to make it not a horror film, are going to find it horrifying. Jennifer Chambers Lynch. So we got a little picture. Boxing Helena, Jennifer Chambers Lynch. And then we have Clive Barker and David Cronenberg. Cronenberg's Dead Ringers, 1988, delves into the lives of identical twin gynecologists. It's a contemporary take on the most familiar of horror motifs, the mad scientist and his female victim. I think Dead Ringers is a real departure, says Cronenberg. Dead Ringers is not science fiction, and the fantasy element, which is in most of my films, is not there. The film is much more naturalistic. Addicted to barbiturates, Cronenberg's gynecologists sink into madness, and madness reflected in their terrifying surgical instruments. The Art of the Fly, 1986, was to make the fantasy seem absolutely real. The challenge of Dead Ringers is the reverse, to make the realistic seem fantastic. I've always wanted to do a picture about twins, but I did not want any part of the standard twin premise, the psychotic twin versus the virtuous one. Banned from practicing as gynecologist, Cronenberg's fictional twins begin to regress back to childhood. Finally, in a chilling parody of a cesarean section, one of the twins operates on the other for the first time, tuning their instruments on a male torso. The image I keep seeing when I think of Dead Ringers is all those tools, says Chambers Lynch. I think that there's a fascination with how it all works, why it all works that way. Gynecology is such a beautiful metaphor for the mind-body split, says Cronenberg. I think the movie is disturbing because it's all existential fear and terror, the evanescence of our lives and the fragility of our own mental states, and therefore the fragility of reality. One of our touchstones for reality is our bodies, and yet they are by definition ephemeral. So, to whatever degree we center our reality and our understanding of reality in our bodies, we are surrendering what sense of reality in our bodies' ephemerality. By affecting the body, whether it's with TV, drugs, invented or otherwise, you may alter your reality. What makes gynecology icky for people is the formality of it, continues Cronenberg. The woman is paying the gynecologist, let's say it's a man, and allowing him to have intimate knowledge of her sexual organs, which are normally reserved for lovers and husbands. Everyone agrees to suppress any element of eroticism, emotion, passion, intimacy. David Cronenberg loosely based Dead Ringers on a magazine article he had read in which journalist Ron Rosenbaum reported on the true life story of Cyril and Stuart Marcus. These twin gynecologists killed themselves with a drug overdose in July 1975 and were found dead in their New York apartment in bizarre circumstances. It was front page news when it first happened, says Rosenbaum, and I think what made it a distinctive kind of story was that these were extremely highly respected doctors at one of the most prestigious teaching hospitals in America. And basically, they were found dead and naked amid junk food wrappers, garbage that had been there for a couple of weeks. As Cronenberg recalls, I first heard about the Marcus twins through a blurb in the paper. Twin docs found dead in posh pad. I thought they were making it up. It was too perfect. Or asides. David Cronenberg's public persona struck me as being perfect for the role of the psychopathic analyst. He's so witty, so erudite, he's so urbane, and yet the movies he makes are visceral and dark and gut-wrenching. Clive Barker. Dead Ringers, Canada, 1988, director David Cronenberg, with Jeremy Irons, Genevieve Buchholz, Heidi von Pileski, Barbara Gordon, Shirley Douglas, Stephen Lack, 20th Century Fox, rank color. In Cronenberg's dark, disturbing psychological thriller, Irons gives a remarkably powerful performance in the dual roles of twin gynecologists Beverly and Elliot Mantle, who are obsessed with the mysteries of sex and anatomy. When they begin to share the affections of an aging actress, Claire Bujold, their self-control begins to slip away, and they discover that brothers who share everything must also share madness. Lee Wilson's seamless optical effects are incredible to watch. Based on the book Twins by Barry Wood and Jack Kiesland, it was the offbeat Cronenberg touches, such as bizarre surgical instruments for mutant women, and remains one of the director's most disturbing works today. A woman's parts could indeed become perfect. He believed this, or he wouldn't have become an obgyn. Just once, he saw the perfectly formed part of a virginal female in medical school, a cadaver. She was 17. Not an attractive girl in death, but her parts were without comparison. Almost too painful to dissect, he considered removing the entire area and saving in a jar of formaldehyde, but there would have been repercussions. From Precious by Roberta Lannis. Pictures for Dead Ringers. And then you've got these twins. They were widely considered to be quite brilliant doctors, says Rosenbaum. They had Park Avenue offices, very prestigious New York hospital connections. They were at the top of their profession, and they were doing work that was really the beginning of the baby boom fertility craze, which became very big in the 1980s. They were on the cutting edge of that. It was science and it was magic, and what was most kind of cult surrounded them. We were able to reconstruct the basic pattern of their final days, Rosenbaum continues. One twin, Cyril, was falling toward the end, and Stuart would show up and take his appointments. One woman whose pregnancy they had helped nurse along had a miscarriage, and one of the twins called her up and shouted at her, abused her, almost as if it was her fault for losing the baby. Stuart eventually began to earn money by doing abortions, which was less which was lucrative and called for less skill and less patient contact. It was in a way ironic because their lives had been devoted to fertility and now they were aborting babies. I can imagine a world in which identical twins are only a concept like mermaids, says Cronenberg. The fact that Elliot and Beverly are identical twins is their evolution into something monstrous. They are creatures as exotic as the fly. And then there's a list of selected works of David Cronenberg, which of course is not going to be up to date because that man works. And that was T for torso. Man, I love Cronenberg. I haven't seen Boxing Helena, but that it does sound like a very intriguing film, and it certainly sounds like something that I would like. I love. Where is? Oh, it's right here. Dead Ringers is within reach. This is my copy of Dead Ringers. But I recently watched Crash, David Cronenberg's Crash, for the first time, and I freaking loved it. I'm not going to watch it again so quickly because that might be weird, but I'm definitely going to watch it again next year because I feel like I missed a lot. But man, that was a beautifully crafted, intricate film that had so much to say. And I'd never heard, I'd only ever heard that it was weird, but it was definitely not anything that I expected. And I thought it was awesome. So that was T is for torso. It's funny, when the chapter started, I was like, oh, I can talk about burlesque stuff and how the torso actually is incredibly important in the world of burlesque because it is so much skin. Like your back and your torso is so important because it is an insane amount of skin to show. But I got carried away with David Cronenberg because that's more fun to talk about anyway. So next week we have U for Unborn. And then we will finish this book up. We're almost at the end. Thank you for reading with me. Bye.